Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Sim Experience South Africa. You're watching our MX5 League, Division 2, which we'll be doing tonight. And then later on in the evening, we will be going towards our Div 1 race. But for now, it's Div 2. It's MX5s at Watkins, Glen. So a bit of more of an American track. They sometimes get the NASCARs to run here, so it's always a bit of a curious thing to be riding on the same track as those cars. And it's a bit of a weird consideration thinking that the oval cars actually can turn to the right. But these cars are a lot more agile than those, so it's going to be interesting to see how they fare around here. Just quickly looking at our championship standings. So for the Division 1, so we've only split apart the times, apart the points, but all of the drivers are competing in the same championship. It's just easier to see that way. So Dennis Mitchell, Dylan Versaghi, Pieter Grobler, James Leach Jr., Tommy Leary-Moss, Ian Upton, Richard van Heerden, Dani van Rooyen, Melvin Gous, Mornay Deploy, Michael Rust, Herman Nieuwoud, and then James Crook, Peter Kalnijs, Stephen Sparks, Stephen Castellan, Alistair Barnard, Robert Franco, Craig Wesley, Tian Marais, James Leach Jr., Senior, sorry, Timo Smit, Matt Williams, Renier Leach, then Eric Leitwanger, Ross Heeman, John Beton, Sean Webber, Dennis Knutse, Basil van Rijn, Dean van Wyk, Stuart Mack. And then working towards our Division 2 drivers, so Sean Johnson doing very well for himself with 538 points, Rian van Westhuizen, Marius van Wyk, Gijsbert Atti Nagel, André Hildebrand, Sean Willevier, Willem Stein, Keen Gous, Dani Stander, Ilke Wringa, Gavi Gous, and Nico Smit rounding out the pack. So it's going to be interesting to see them go around. Looking at the track map itself, you've got the start-finish straight, then immediate 90 degrees to the right, the 90, working up towards the S's into the back straight. So it's going to be very crucial that the drivers maintain that speed through the S's. Then off the back straight, you've got the inner loop, which is a few interesting turns. Moving in towards the outer loop, you're going to have to manage your throttle around that corner. Into the chute, then move into the toe, boot and heel. So a lot of near 90 degree corners there. And then on towards the start finish straight. 5.552 kilometers. It's a fairly decent length of track. I think it's actually very similar to the distance of Monza that we were racing, or that the Formula 1 cars were racing this afternoon. So 4 minutes done of qualifying, and it's about 2 minutes 10 seconds a lap if you're driving it quickly, even longer for an out lap. So it's going to be a bit of a time before the drivers really get their laps in, and they're going to have to really count on getting a banker lap in and maybe a quick lap. They're going to have to only go out once. If they make a mistake on track, that might cost them dearly, and they might even lose the opportunity to put in a valid lap. That's the risky run when we've got such a short qualifying period. Looking at the YouTube chat, I see there's a bit of an activity. James Crook shouting for the SRIC boys. Melvin Coase also chiming in and saying hello. I see there's actually a YouTube channel for the SRIC team, so Simrace Africa crew. Nice to see the support there. Mornay Deploy saying hello. He's going to join Div 2 this week. Let me just see if I can see him here. He's sitting in the pits at the moment, so he is joining us for Div 2 tonight. And then Rudy van Westhuizen saying hello, shouting for SRAC. Cleopas, of course, you're going to be here. Welcome, welcome. And Peter Krobler saying hi. Welcome, Peter. And Rudy van Westhuizen. Also there. It's nice seeing all the usuals. Seeing everyone shouting for their favorite drivers. And it's going to be very fun watching this upcoming talent in the Div 2 class. I think as a beginner driver, you might feel bad driving in Div 2. I remember when I started out with sim racing, and I mean, that was fairly recently. You kind of want to get up there with the Div 1 drivers, but it's actually quite fun having someone a bit closer to your times to race against, because that teaches you quite a few things about how you need to defend, how you need to attack, and how to deal with the pressure of a race. Because it's one thing doing a full race distance without making mistakes. It's another making a full race distance under pressure from another driver, and that's really where sim racing comes into its own, where it becomes really fun. So I'm also just waiting for my timing tower to update before we get everything going. Also, a quick thing that I want to point out now that I see up on our screen, you'll see in the top right hand corner, it was just a KDP and also Alvin. So yeah, I'll quickly just say a big thanks to Alvin for, of course, being our loyal sponsor for all these years. KDP, that's Tommy Leary Moss's company, Cosmo Design and Print. They sponsored a beautiful trophy for the first place of the championship. We'll see if we can show that to you a bit later. But for now, we've got the drivers bringing in time. So Sean Willifeed with a 209.511, and I would expect some more drivers maybe jumping into the 209s. But Sean Willifeed doing very well for himself to get up there. Michael Rust on our screen, 210, also very decent. And then the rest of the drivers getting in their banker laps, so they're still going to push hard for another lap. Also, a big thanks for Monday Deploy for doing our video work and some league work. Well, I think it does a fair amount of it. But yeah, thank you for Murray as well for supporting everything. And he's going to be enjoying a bit more of a carefree night. He's just been very busy with the Formula 1 triple header that we've had, so he's had his hands very full. So tonight he's going to lay back a little bit and enjoy the race with the Div 2 guys. I honestly don't know where Cleopas in the YouTube chat got my gamer name from, but thank you very much for pointing that out to everyone. Yeah. Okay, 1.5 minutes left to go, and it's looking fairly settled so far. Casper Attinahol in the pit, so he's not going to come around for another go. Willifeed looking very solid. Michael Rust not finding the time that he would want. Sean Johnson. Oh, and Thunder pops in at fifth position with a 212.927. That's very solid. And I think, yeah, Marius van Wyk also jumping in there. I was wondering where his name was. So Marius van Wyk there in 4th place, pushing Johnson down a little bit, but jumping in there with a 2:11.683. James Leach Sr. making his way around and actually gaining a nice amount of time on his lap. So he's going to come around the toe into the boot. So the boot complex basically. You'll see there at the bottom left of the track, it kind of looks like a foot. So that's the boot. Now going into the heel. It's actually quite flat. I think I might have been a bit careful through there. So it's actually a lot of this is going to come down to how well you can manipulate the momentum of your car. You really need to hit those apexes. Because it seems like there's quite a few corners that are flat out. So Leach is going to come across the line. He's got a nice amount of time in pocket. This is going to be enough though. And he's going to move up into 7th. So well done, Leach Senior. Matt Williams also coming along. And this is interesting. So he's actually drafting behind the other car. Oh, sorry, no, in front of it. He's got someone behind him there that's either drafting or being held up. But, I mean, you are allowed to do your qualifying lap. It's on the other driver to find space. I think this might be far enough back that Hilke Vringa is actually trying to catch a bit of a draft. And he's actually benefiting from it. So the two drivers working together a little bit. That's a nice... Oh, unfortunately, Hilke just losing it. Just as the cameras went off him. Matt Williams coming across the line with about 3/10 in his hand. That can be very useful. Let's just see what he does on the last turn. And that's going to be a 2:10 improvement. And he's going to jump into 4th place. So Matt Williams securing a nice little position for himself. Hilke Vringa is unfortunately not going to find the time that he wants. Mornay has a bit of time in hand, but he's going to be focusing on actually getting a valid lap in so that he doesn't start from the back of the grid. So we'll keep an eye here. And let's get on board with him. So going into the toe and just managing that throttle a little bit, just making sure that he doesn't overdrive the car. Up the hill towards the heel. Quite a difficult thing to say in English. But hard on the brakes, just get into that apex. Try not to scrub too much speed, and then you've got a lot of exit to use there on the outside of the circuit. Just get that front turned in, and the circuit tightens so quickly. So that can actually be one of the more difficult corners of the track, and maybe a good overtaking opportunity if you can kind of nudge onto the inside there. Now onto the start-finish straight, and this is one of the important exits. So nice, clean little lap there for Deploy, and he's going to jump into 3rd place. So well done, right there at the end. So we're going to send you to ads, and then we will be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are on the grid. We've got Sean Olivier and Michael Rust lining out the front of the grid. And we've got the lights coming up. So, ready to get going. 4, 5, 6 lights. And we are... Oh, nice solid start there from all of the drivers, it would seem. So everyone gets off the line. Although it does seem like... I think that might be Michael back there getting away slightly slowly. So everyone files into order. So Sean Olivier getting that front position, and then the rest of them kind of settling into the grid. Coming through very nice and neat. All the drivers kind of just first want to get a feel for everything, although Rust is trying to get a bit of momentum going around the outside. Rust running defensively as they run towards the end of the track. Olivier just heading out ahead. Rust following behind him. Behind them, Monet kind of keeping up nicely as the rest of the pack spreads out a little bit. Johnson making the advance on James Leach behind him, and now moving towards Van der Westhuizen in front of him. Two drivers very close together. You can see they're shown closely following Van der Westhuizen, and Van der Westhuizen is now under pressure to make a move out in front. The drivers are settling into their positions. Van der Westhuizen trying to drive around Attinagle, unfortunately loses his place as Johnson moves up a position. Leach Senior also involved in a little battle there, and you can see Standard just behind him, running wide off the track, costing himself a fair chunk of time. Coming around towards the last few turns on the track, and we've got Olivier leading the pack, Rust just behind him and Deploy slightly losing touch with the drivers in front of him, so he's going to be racing a little bit more of a lonely race as we continue. It is 17 minutes, so there's still a lot that can happen, but the pack is settling a little bit. Sean Johnson and Ati Nagel now in a little bit of a fight, and Leach making the move on Van der Westhuizen just as the cars go past. So in front of us, Johnson just tailing behind there. That's going to be the big thing, as mentioned by some of the guys in the YouTube chat. There's a lot of drafting that's going to happen. And Johnson just moving up on the inside and moving ahead of Ati Nagel. He is going to position himself on the inside for the next turn, but is he going to restrict himself too much going in? Johnson moving ahead. Willifear is now fallen back. You can see him there off the track, unfortunately. Matt Williams promoted into third position. Van Beek leading Johnson and Ati behind him as they go along into towards the toe. I do want to see what the drivers do with this. So just regulating the brakes. Ooh, and Van Beek getting very close to jumping on the inside of Williams there. Williams just in the correct position at the right time, and that closes off that position for them. So some nice defending there from Williams. Van Beek now needs to reckon with Johnson behind him, and Johnson has been driving up the pack the whole time. It's always surprising to see someone struggle a little bit with qualifying, but then get such immense pace during the race itself. And I think the extra weight of the car might be acting like a little bit of added downforce, gaining a bit more of the size grip with the ground, and that's just helped him with the feeling of the car being a bit more settled. These cars are a bit more forgiving, but I think if they do get light, they might feel a bit loosey-goosey, so sometimes you might not want to put in the minimum fuel. Maybe have a bit of a balance of a bit of a buffer near the end of the race. A few extra liters never hurts. So Willifear now into the pits, and I would suspect that there's some damage from earlier. He has to go into the pits to repair. Gho's setting the fastest lap. Not sure how he managed that. He does have a bit of clean air, and he's going to have to contend with one of the drivers coming out of the pits. That's going to be Willifear slotting in front of him, and they will go along. Apologies, that wasn't the fastest lap of the race, but just the fastest lap for Gho's. Deploy now into second after Willifear's little problem. So Michael in front, Deploy just keeping in touch with him. I see some of the supporters shouting there for Michael Rust, and then Mornay Deploy just making sure that Rust doesn't have too easy of a race, and we'll maybe see a bit of a battle between them as the race goes on. Ati Nagel and Van Beek are duking it out here up towards the heel and up on the track, side by side. So Ati pulling ahead of Van Beek and getting away nicely. Van Beek's going to settle into that slipstream and just try and keep up in the following few turns. So you can see a lot of drafting going on there. Van Beek 3 tenths behind Ati Nagel. That's within drafting range. You can see them coming towards the main straight. But Ati has secured that position quite nicely. Out the front, Michael Rust still maintaining that gap with Deploy, so not absolutely running away. In terms of pace, Deploy is a few tenths slower than Michael Rust. So that is a bit odd, although I would expect that deploy gets a bit more up to speed as the race continues. Looking at the YouTube chat, remember, if you are there, feel free to say hi to your favorite drivers, and we'll try and answer those shout outs as they come along. Cleopas just saying the drivers just need to keep their head down, keep cool and calm, and that's exactly what they need to do right here. Matt Williams and Sean Johnson in a little bit of a battle. Johnson pulling alongside, but still slightly behind. Matt Williams is going to have the inside of the turn, and he's going to charge on through. Williams trying to close down the gap, and he's slowly gaining on the inside. They're going to be side by side for the heel. He tries to squeeze Williams there on the outside. Nice movement, getting it done quite neatly. And they will continue the fight through the rest of the lap. Williams not wanting to let Johnson go, but a little bit of oversteer there, so that is a bit of a time loss there. He just now needs to get those nerves settled and get his foot down again. Dennis Mitchell on the YouTube chat saying it's very nice to see Matt improving, and that's always the fun thing of watching these drivers. It's just before Williams trying to look there on the inside. So it's always nice seeing these drivers develop, see how their racecraft develops, and just in general the driver that they become. I remember at the start of the series we had a fair few incidents, and the driving does seem a lot cleaner now, especially with a few less drivers here. Some of the guys tend to drop off towards the end of the season, but your dedicated guys stay in, and it's always nice to see them here and see them working at it. So Ati now behind Williams. So Williams is struggling a little bit at the moment, and he's got Ati to contend with. Ati's right on the rear of that car. And side by side, Ati's going to be positioned for the outside. Williams is going to be forced to either outbrake him or fall in behind. He tries to stick there on the apex and keeps together. He's going to move towards the outside to assume a wider racing line. Ati now defensive on the inside. Not entirely defensive, but attacking on the inside. We'll see them heading up towards the heel. So is Ati going to be able to outbrake him? He does. Williams not able to carry that momentum around the outside. Doesn't have the confidence to push the car yet. So he's going to pull behind Ati Nagel as Ati charges on through. Up ahead, Michael Rust opening up that gap. Monet hasn't let him go too much, but it is now 1.4 seconds between the drivers. So it is a bit of breathing room for Rust with 10 or 9 minutes left to go in the race. Sean Johnson also settling into third position, all a second behind deploy, so and running a little bit wide there. I think that might have been pushing it. Might have been pushing it a little bit too aggressively on the acceleration pedal. So also just getting used to the car as conditions change a little bit. So on board with Michael Rust as he heads through the inner loop and now into the outer loop. So you can see he can just bend that throttle all the way through. Track narrows a little bit, and yeah, it might get a little tricky to overtake. So managing that throttle, just getting the car onto the apex, and then get the foot down towards the toe. Just get that initial brake to get the car turned in, and then it's all about managing the throttle. If you go on the throttle too quickly, you're going to shift the weight of the car to the rear, lift those front wheels, and you're not going to be able to turn. So it's all about weight transfer with these cars. You can see they're braking, getting the transfer onto the front of the car, and once you've got the turn done, then you can bleed in that throttle a little bit. Again, on the brakes, wait a little bit and then slide throttle. You can see him speeding off out of the corner. It's nice wide corners, so you can get on the throttle very early. You just need to make sure that you don't blend in too much throttle. Now flat all the way to the start finish straight. Nice little safety lift there just to make sure that it doesn't run into the wall. Now to run all the way to the 90. Nice hard braking, getting the car thrown in. Still on the throttle just to get that speed up once you're on the exit. So it seems to be brake, turn, and then throttle as soon as possible. Nice and flat through the S's. It's not too much of a problem for these cars. I think if you are faster, you might need to have a bit of downforce through here, but for a normal road car, that doesn't seem to be a problem. And then lastly, to the inner loop. I expect a little bit of braking here. There's a slight, yeah, there you can see. You kind of want to get your braking done on that first one, on that first turn, and then get your foot down, because then you're going to be flat out all the way through the outer loop into the chute, and a little bit of braking just to get the car turned in onto the apex, and then again bleed in the throttle. So Russ showing us how he likes to do the lap. Ray staying with us for the ride there in his rear view mirrors. Donnie Stander and Sean Olivier now in a nice battle here. Sean having a bit of a rough race in terms of consistency, but he does have some solid pace on him. Just quickly checking the times. Trying to see where Olivier is on the timing boards. Seem to have a bit of an error on our side. Olivier has disappeared from the official timing board, so I cannot tell you what his previous lap has been like. But he is definitely in the race, as you can see him there in the car, just turning right. Atti Nagel and Sean Johnson now getting close together. Atti doing a superb previous lap, 8/10 faster than Sean Johnson. Yeah, 8 to 9 tenths faster again. So he's been just bringing that gap down, and it's now right toward the rear, and Johnson has a bit to contend with. So Johnson now has to move into a defensive mode. Atti really wants to get the move done. So into the S's, and Atti already putting the pressure on, moving towards the outside, showing the nose. You can immediately see that affecting Johnson a little bit as he goes very close to the inside there. Atti positioning himself very nicely for an attack if he can pull alongside, and he's going to be in front, and Johnson is going to have to fall behind. But now there is still a lot to do. This is a good spot for drafting, since you are on the throttle that much. You just need to keep up though. Atti already opening up a bit of a gap, 4 tenths between Atti and Johnson already after only a few turns. Now Johnson is keeping up a bit more. He might have just been thrown off balance by that attack. And through the toe they go, so now it's nice flat out all the way down towards the heel. Looking at the time for Mornay while these two are battling it out. Mornay bringing that gap down to 9 tenths. So doing a superb job of keeping up with Rust. Some drivers saying Mornay is aiming for that win. And he's definitely showing it. So as we swap over, so Russ now nearing the end of the track, and Mornay right on his heels. He closes it in, and now it's time for a bit of an attack. So best lap for Rust, not for Mornay though. So Mornay has had a bit of pace in hand previously. He seems to have found the car, kind of settled himself a little bit. That's 7th, so catching up nicely. Rust now thinking about possible strategies to defend. And I can think Mornay has probably been scoping out where Rust is slower, or at least asking his crew chief to do that for him. So now through the first sector, Mornay faster by a 10th. And Rust coming very, very close indeed to a battle. He also got very close to Johnson there. I think there might have been a swap around. So as we go in towards the boot complex, Mornay still keeping that 7/10 ahead. Lots of drivers supporting Mornay out there. And then, of course, I think Rust is being supported by the SRAC people. Some of you suggesting that he's actually controlling the gap. And we will see whether that is the case. Rust regaining that 10th that he lost in the first sector, in the second sector. And now 40 seconds left of the race. So if they cross the line before that timer runs out, it's going to be another lap. So then 2 laps for Mornay to get anything done, if he wants to get it done. And they're going to cross the line, and indeed we will have 2 laps more of racing. So it is do or die for Rust. And I do apologize if you are at the back of the pack and have some action going. Unfortunately, we're going to have to stick with these 2 because this is for the win. And it is extremely close. Any mistake from Rust and Mornay is going to be passed. So it's on Rust's shoulders to keep this consistent and to keep it clean. Mornay struggling to find a bit of time. And then further back in 3rd and 4th, Ati and Johnson swapping places yet again. As you can see them side by side there in the background. Rust now still ahead, and definitely sweating in his seat. Basil van Rijn on the YouTube channel shouting for SRAC, and Rust doing the best that he can. So deploy, giving it his all. You can see there 4/10 between the 2 drivers. It's neck and neck. Mornay struggling in that first sector though. 1/10 slower, so he's gained some time in the second sector. And it's back and forth between these 2. So quite a few turns where there's a bit of a differing performance between them. But it's equaling a similar lap time at the end. So Rust still keeping ahead. They're going to cross the line to trigger that final lap. And it's everything or nothing for Rust here as he pushes the car. Mornay also pushing as hard as possible, using all of that exit. And now we go across the line. So Mornay from behind, just looking there at the rear of Rust. And he must be absolutely sweating here in the cockpit, getting nice and close. 0.3 10th, and you can see that banked corner just helping them keep the speed up. But it's so frustrating for Monet. He's getting the speed down, getting towards the side, but he can't really go that far towards the outside. Now, pulling alongside one another, Deploy on the outside, Rust on the inside. He's going to have to fend very hard. Let's see whether Rust is hard on the brakes. Rust getting that car turned in very quickly. And I have no idea how Rust managed to go through there that fast. That is absolutely insane. Rust pulling that gap on Deploy, and I think Monet might have been braking a little bit early because he was seeing that Rust was going to really go for it. Now settling into our final positions, and it's going to be a reversed grid for the next race. Remember, we've got 2 races, so there is going to be a lot of opportunity for these drivers yet to come. But Rust giving it his absolute everything there until the end. So Deploy now settling into that second position. And unless Rust is going to make a mistake, this is going to be the finishing order. Now the battle that's going on towards the end is Atti Nagel and Sean Johnson. So we'll just wait for these two to cross the line and then we'll swap over. And that is going to be a win for Michael Rust. Behind them, still duking it out, is Gijsbert Atti Nagel and Johnson. Very close together right until the end. And it's going to be Atti taking the 3rd place, Johnson taking the 4th. And a photo finish, or almost a photo finish, right at the end. Matt Williams coming across the line in 5th position. Willefear in 6th. Just quickly writing down a few notes. And what a all 3 cars stopping together very neatly. Stander coming across the line, 8th position. Leach in 9th. And Van der Westhuizen is going to be close behind on his heels. Harvey Goos making his way around the track. A bit of a rough backside on that car. I think someone might not have expected his planned braking markers and maybe ran into the backside of him. It was a bit unfortunate, unless he spun out and slid the rear into a barrier. But some good racing here for Div 2, right up to the end. And Rust just doing an amazing job of keeping ahead there. Goos across the line in 11th, and Wernga making his way around the track. Wernga, one of our new sim racers, he's only been racing for the entirety of this MX5 league, so it's only a few months that he's been behind the sim racing wheel, and he's improved quite a bit. It's always a challenge in the sim racing community because a lot of the guys are already on an extremely high level, and as a beginner it's very intimidating because there's so much that you need to learn. Right, I am going to send us off to an advertisement break, and then we'll be right back for race number 2. Stay right with us. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are on the grid for the race, getting ready to get the second race underway, and we've got all of the drivers lined up. Hilke Weringa at the front alongside Gavi Goos, so they'll be kicking us off. We've got the lights ready, 6 lights up. It's going to be 3 of them, 4, 5, 6. 6 lights out, and off we go. So very good start there for Sean Olivier, right there in the middle of the pack as we get along. So Weringa keeping a hold of his position. He's going to be ahead by the turn. The rest of the drivers falling behind a little bit, and Sean Olivier unfortunately going off the track. Sorry, not Willif. Yeah, I might have gotten confused there a little bit. Willifeed moving ahead in the pack, and he's going to keep touch with Weringa. So this is a good opportunity for Willifeed. He's had a rough situation in his first race, but now he is positioned for a good fight for the rest of the race. Weringa leading very nicely. I can imagine him sweating a little bit, but this is a good opportunity for him to get a bit of experience. Weringa defending there. Willifeed going to go a bit more on the inside as they run side by side into the chute, and Weringa is going to follow behind Willifeed. Thunder, whoa, and Goos cutting across the track and nearly hitting a few drivers in the process. It was a good avoidance there. I think that might have been Goos. He might have been struggling with his car a little bit there. Martin Nagel chasing down Donny Stander in front of him, while Willifeed and Weringa still fairly close together by the looks of things. Fortunately, I think Williams might have had a bit of a rough situation at the back. Now the rest of the pack comes on piling through, and Deploy charging ahead. Stander is caught up with Atinagel, and is now very, very close behind him, charging on ahead. Deploy and Matt Williams now in a very, very solid fight here. Deploy in a bit of a sandwich there between Williams and Van Wyk. Williams leading a train of cars down the main straight, and Deploy now looking for an opportunity here. Some of the cars really heavy on the brakes behind him. Johnson and Van Wyk swapping positions side by side. And unfortunately, a bit of a incident there between the drivers. And that's cost Johnson a big position, and Van Beek has fallen back as well. Meanwhile, Atti has gotten around Stander Wierenga to get into that second position. So he's going to be chasing down Willefear in front of them. Wierenga still in a fight here. He's got Stander to deal with behind him. And he's got the inside line for the shoot. Stander able to carry that outside momentum. Very aware of what the limits are of his tyre's grip. Wierenga is still doing a superb job in 4th place. This is very intimidating as a beginner, so he's done well to keep in there and to keep it clean. Further behind, Michael Rust working his way into the pack, and he's found Deploy in front of him as they are once again side by side into the heel. So Rust on the inside is going to try and make the pass, but Mornay is going to carry that momentum through the outside, having the unrestricted lines to Deploy yet again in front. And Rust going to tuck back behind and look for a different opportunity. This fight is going to cost them time though. Williams a bit further up the road than Deploy would want. Rust now looking for any opportunity, cutting towards the inside, and is going to come towards the braking zone. Rust just a bit later on the brakes, able to carry the momentum through. And now Deploy slipping in behind, trying to catch that draft. Deploy looking to maybe dart towards the outside, not going to be able to. Both drivers pushing the cars to their limits. Malmilko is saying they should try and fight through the field and then dice. But it's difficult as a racing driver to get that spontaneous teamwork going. On the inside is going to be Deploy. Rust slightly behind him, making their way towards the inner loop. Rust now behind Deploy yet again. They're to and fro on the track. And in front of them, Williams has gotten very close to Ghost, so their battle might push them back as well. But yeah, as two drivers, you need to be careful that your battles don't set you back too much. Keeping an eye on that bigger picture might be very useful for the rest of the race. Now side by side. Oh, and unfortunately that's Leach Senior spinning out there in the background. There might have been a collision. I didn't spot it. And now Rust and Deploy yet again side by side. Rust on the inside. And he's going to pull ahead of Mornay. So Mornay now on the fight back. So he's going to slot in behind Rust. Mornay just sticking behind Williams and Ghost, and a nice little battle in front of them, and that's just pushed Ghost back in front of Rust. So now getting the pass on Ghost done, and both Rust and Deploy are going to move on through. So a strong battle going on here. Down the main straight towards the 90. Mornay is going to dart towards the inside and get the car side by side. Rust running very wide. He's going to have to concede the position to Mornay, and then the fight will continue from there. Deploy still side by side with Rust. This is a rough one for both of them, so they're losing a lot of speed, not able to draft behind one another. Williams now 2.8 seconds down the road. You can see they're Deployed just pulling ahead slightly on the inside. Rust just keeping in touch with his car. one of the drivers there. Williams, unfortunately, making a mistake. That's put him behind. And promoted these two, but Weringa is now 4.7 seconds up the road. That's a tall ask to do within 12 minutes. But we still have 12 minutes of racing left. Anything can happen. Behind us, Van der Westhuizen and Goos in a solid battle here. Van der Westhuizen extremely close to getting moved on, and then they've got Williams for company as well in front of them. Nice and hard on the brakes. Van der Westhuizen not finding a kink in Goos' armor yet. Goos defending on the inside, hard on the brakes. And Van der Westhuizen is going to try and drive around the outside, is going to get the move done. So that's nice and neat. Meanwhile, Rust and Deploy still in the fight. Deploy just keeping ahead. Oh, and unfortunately Rust hitting the wall. That's going to cost him heaps of time, especially down the straight. So you see the time falling down there now. This is something he's going to be kicking himself about. The gap now down to 1 second. Just a quick shout out to Hilke Weringa in 4th position, now 5th. I didn't realize the boy was so close. I apologize, but Weringa doing a superb job. I mean, it's halfway through the race. He's still in the top 5. Yes, he does have Rust right behind him, but he's done extremely well to keep up there. So Weringa maybe even looking for a move there. Just positioning himself, but having a great time. Rust now on the outside of Weringa. And charging on through. At the front of the pack, all on his own, Willefear is having a bit of a better race than his previous one. And with only himself and his car for company, and he's enjoying himself as he goes along. Closest to him is going to be Atti Nagel, 6 seconds down the road. You can't imagine him being able to do something about that towards the end of the race. Cleopas urging Gijsbert to press the NOS button. I would love to see these cars with ridiculous amounts of boost, although it might get a little bit scary, especially with how floaty they might feel through certain corners. Willefear with a 209.190, extremely fast lap, so doing very well. I'm not entirely sure who this YouTube user is, but Pooty saying, man, these two make for a great watch. And that's, of course, these two gentlemen right here, Deploy, and then further down the road, you can see him right there in the background, Rust. They've been duking it out as they fight their way towards the front of the pack, but have cost one another a bit of time. Donnie's under 13 seconds up the road. Also kind of quiet in terms of the race, but he's done superbly well with that 13 seconds gap. So he can just manage that gap, make sure that he drives safely, and he should be in good form. Maurice van Beek, after a bit of a incident in the early stages of the race, now making his comeback, driving up a few positions. But it is difficult, especially if you incur a bit of damage, to really recover from that. So Hilgo also doing well, now down to 8th, but he had a few fast drivers come up behind him. Still having a very good time. Willefear in front, and let's see how he attacks the circuit. So moves out, uses all of the exits under the start-finish line, and he's going to attack that throttle all the way to the 90 into the first turn. So nice and hard on the brakes, misses the apex a little bit, so he can still work on that a bit, but he is carrying a lot of speed now through the S's, and this is no issue for the car. It's just about managing that line. Now onto the back straight. That foot is just absolutely pinned on the throttle all the way through. You can see the engine really struggling to fight against that air resistance. I think this might have been the line that was taken by Rust earlier, almost straight lining that inner loop. And now through the outer loop into the chute. A little bit of braking, blending in the throttle. That might have been a bit early, but trying to get that foot down as quick as possible. And now into the toe, using as much of the road on the outside as he possibly dares. Getting that foot down just as he's past the apex. He is losing a little bit of time through that section, so I think the boot might not be his strongest. Now hard braking for the heel. Drift the car towards the outside. And then set up for the next corner. So this is always tricky, getting that throttle blended in. Wall closes in on you as the corner tightens. And now a little bit of a safety lip, maybe? No, not much, not really. Full throttle, and then the last 90 degrees before the main straight, and he goes across the line. Got a very, very solid lap there. Rust now 4.6 seconds behind deploy. I think we might have lost Thunder while we were on board there. I'm not exactly sure what happened to Thunder, who is now a bit further down the pack than I remember. I might be remembering incorrectly. So most of the race done. 4 minutes left, so that's probably about three laps of racing left before we get going. So Rene's sitting out on his own. No one really for company. And at this stage of the race, everyone's just trying to settle into their positions. Standard closing in on Virnga here. With a 0.7 second gap. He does seem to be quite fast through these few turns. Van Wyk falling behind Virnga. I'm not exactly sure what happened there. He was at least a second up the road. And now Virnga up into 7th on the inside, with Van Wyk trying to carry that momentum around the outside of the turn. Virnga, unfortunately, contact there, and that's going to be, I think that is Thunder off the road. Unfortunate with Virnga's car drifting wide, and Stunner is going to fall all the way to the back. Harvey goes now past him, and Leach Senior as well. Leach Senior now trying to drive around the outside of Goos, and he is going to get the turn done. That rear of Corsa's car looking very loose as he has to counteract the car. Now down towards the main straight. Leach immediately opening that gap to Kos. Thunder pulling alongside and ahead of Kos. Now heading in towards the 90. Just a quick look at Van Wyk. I think I swapped places with Van der Westhuizen, so a few mistakes coming in from drivers. You can see massive jumps in positions. That's normally when a driver makes a mistake. They just fall back. Now, Van Wyk in no man's land at the moment with 15 seconds in front of him and 3 behind. .42, so 40 seconds left. Willefear is going to come across the line, and that's going to leave us with 2 more laps of racing. He has to cross that line before the timer hits 0. So he still has a bit of a way to go. Watkins Glen does seem like a very fun track for these cars, but some of the straights do seem quite long. I remember when we drove these cars at Okayama. It's quite a lot of fun with those twists and those winding turns. Here it is absolutely critical that you nail the corners. You need those exits sorted out. But for a reverse race, this has actually been fairly calm. Yeah, reverse grid race. Behind us, Leach Senior trying to get past Virenka, and they are going to get the pass done. Virenka now under pressure from Stander behind him, and he's going to hold on to that position as well as he can. Stander jumping towards the inside. He's going to try and get that move done. Virenka maintains that momentum around the outside, and is going to be in front of Stander for the S's. Stander slightly falling back, deciding to use the draft. Although he does seem to be struggling a little bit following behind. And Virenka holding onto that position for dear life. Now towards the inner loop. It's all about how much speed can you carry through here. Stander still 0.7 seconds behind, and unfortunately I think that might have been close. Hitting a wall. I heard a noise, but I don't know exactly what happened there. Sean Willefear now crossing the line, so this should be the final lap. And a 2:08.954. Incredibly quick on the time there. So doing a superb job there. Stander still behind Virenka. Trying to dive towards the inside, and he's compromised this line quite badly. And Virenka is going to be able to maintain the drive up the hill and towards the end of the lap. Virenka absolutely, and unfortunately contact between the two drivers. And Virenka maintaining control of his car. I don't know how that happened. It looked like both of them losing control, but then Stander's car bumping him back on the track. And Virenka is going to absolutely pray for the end of the race to come as soon as possible, but he's going to have to do another lap. Willefear is still on his own, doing a superb job. Atinagel in second. And then further down the road we've got Deploy and Rust 3 seconds behind him. So Willowfield now just trying to round off this lap as safely as possible. He's got heaps of time in hand, so there isn't the biggest rush in the world. He just needs to finish in first place. So he's going to control the car quite nicely. Not really letting up too much. And then getting that last few turns. So one turn left. Just a right hand turn. He's going to squeeze that nice and close to the wall. He's going to come across the line for the first position. And that is going to be a win for Sean Willowfield. So huge congrats to him. Atinagel coming across the line for second position. And then Deploy in third. Onto the grass with the wheels. He's playing it dangerous for this close to the end. So superb job there. And the drivers are going to try and go for some victory donuts, but not going to find it. Michael Rust in fourth place across the line. Matt Williams in fifth. And then I think those might be, oh no, some of the drivers just lining up a little bit. And there you can see all of them parking. I think that is in finishing order. So let's see, Willowfield, then Gijsberg to his left. So Willowfield on the right, Gijsberg to his left, and then that was Deploy to his right. As the drivers take some victory donuts. Willowfield is celebrating, having a little bit of fun here at the end. That's a bit of a wide donut. As the last guys come across the line. So your finishers are Willowfield, Atinagel, Deploy, Rust, Williams, Van Wyk, Leach Senior, Berendga, Van der Westhuizen, Gous, and then Stander rounding out the pack. So I am quickly just going to make a note. And we'll see if we can quickly find the drivers, and then I will be back with you shortly. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are on board with the Div 1 races as they go out to the track for qualifying. So we've had, earlier tonight we've had the Div 2 races, now it's Div 1. And we are racing MX5s at Watkins Glen. Just quickly having a bit of a look at the standings. And it is Dennis Mitchell leading the championship. For some experience, South Africa, 927 points. And then behind him, we've got Dylan Versace, Pieter Grobler, James Leach Jr., Tommy Leary Moss, Ian Upton, Richard van Heerden, Donnie van Rooyen, Melvin Ghost, Mornay Deploy, Michael Rust, Herman Nieuwoud, James Crook, Pieter Geldenhuis, Stephen Sparks, Stephen Castellan, Alistair Barnard, Robert Franco, Craig Wesley, Tian Murray, James Leach Sr., Timo Smith, Matt Williams, Renier Leach, Eric Leitwanger, Rossiman, John Beton, Sean Weber, Dennis Knutse, Basil van Rijn, Dean van Wyk, and then Stuart Mack. So this race is going to be a very interesting one with lots of drivers very close together in terms of pace. I'm just quickly looking for an interesting little bit of... There we go. So earlier I mentioned that we actually have a trophy up for grabs. Now I'm going to show it on screen for you now. So we have got this wonderful trophy, and is actually being sponsored by Cosmo Design and Print. It's Tommy Leary Moss's company, and is an absolute beautiful trophy. I'm kind of jealous that I'm not racing in this series myself now that I look at the thing. I mean, that would be a wonderful addition to your sim racing room. So thank you so much to Tommy for sponsoring that for us. And he's actually in the race, so I think he is. No, I'm lying. Oh, here he is. Apologies. So thank you so much to Tommy Ramos, and you can see him actually. Let's see if we can get a better view of it. It is a bit backwards. I don't think we've got rear-facing views for the cars, but there you can see the KDP logo on his car. That's a bit far away. There we go. Nice little quick view of the logo there on his bonnet. So thank you for him for that trophy. Once again, thank you so much for Alwyn as well. And there you can see the logo on the other car's bonnet, for sticking out with us for so long, being such a superb sponsor. And then on the side of the cars, you'll also see the Skinny Media logo. That is Mornay Deploy. We saw him racing earlier in Div 2. Thank you so much for the video work that you've been doing. And also the work that you've been doing in terms of keeping these leagues going and your involvement with that. And then we've of course got Dennis Mitchell that's very involved with some experience South Africa as well. Big thanks to him. And thanks to all of that, we've got a whole lot of racing going on, and that's one hell of a drift from the car behind Tommy Moss. Don't exactly know who's that driver at the moment. Still have to wait for my timing screens to update. So 5 minutes done of qualifying, and the drivers are going to start to get their laps in. And I already see 2 drivers into the 209s. That's going to be James Crook and Robert Franco, but it's not enough to get onto the timing sheet yet. Dennis Mitchell is going to be hoping for a nice run here at the track. So he's going to be giving it his absolute all. So let's follow him for a lap through Watkins Glen and see how different the approach is for the drivers of Div 1. Once again, if you are in the YouTube chat, feel free to say hi. And you see a bit of support for the drivers there. You can always say who your favorite driver is. We see a few newbie faces, so Yvonne Castellan saying hi. Best of luck to Stephen Castellan and Ross Heeman. Really fun best days, and just saying thank you for Tommy for that, saying he's awesome for that trophy. Really fun best days, and also saying hi. And we are set to watch a few what the sim races call aliens. So we've got absolutely no idea how they've gained their unearthly pace, but they do manage it. So let's see what Dennis Mitchell manages around the lap of Watkins Glen. You can see he's already in the 208s. So finding some time through the first corner and absolutely diving in with the momentum. Unfortunately, he's not going to find the pace as he gets stuck behind the car. As everyone settles into the timing tower, we'll follow Van Rooyen up the hill through the S's, nice and hard on the throttle, and this car's throttle is absolutely pinned all the way down the straight. You heard Mornay Deploy say that you really need to make sure that you don't lose speed anywhere. You can see Van Rooyen almost straight lining that inner loop, now through the outer loop and towards the chute. He's just absolutely pinning the throttle. You just need to be very smooth on your steering. A little bit of braking to get the car rotated in. I think he might have rotated it a little bit too much there. You can see him backing out of the corner a bit. And then, sorry, he's found the wall there at the toe. So James Leach Jr. is finding heaps of time on this lap. This is a big worry for the leaders if he's able to complete this lap cleanly. So he's going to go into the heel. Dennis Mitchell jumping back into first with the 208.123. Quite a neat little number there. Then James Leach Jr. getting a bit of a slipstream from the cars in front of him. still chasing down the time. Now 7/10 in hand, or almost, as he still has 2 corners left. And this can turn out quite well for him. One more corner, he just needs to avoid the wall on the outside. Nearly making him a hard stop, but he's going to come across the line, and that's going to be a very superb time. Popping him into second with a 2:08.832. Very solid time for Leach Jr., so he's going to be extremely happy with that. Royan still kind of on the same time. Kessler now heading out for a lap. We'll see if he finds any time. So through the S's, he's going to have to keep that foot pinned. He does have a car a bit up the road of him. That might help him pull him ahead slightly. Just keeping on the cusp of what his fastest time is. We'll see what he does through the inner loop, because this is the big place where you can make up time. Oh, and he's unsettled the car, unfortunately. That's one hell of a drift. And he did so well to keep it in control. Unfortunately, that's going to be his lap, but that was some good footage for on screen. Also saying hi there to Ati Nagel on the YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us after your Div 2 race. And Ati Nagel doing a superb job, securing third in the first race and second in the second race. So, looking around for someone that might be up on the Delta, qualifying is ending. So, the drivers are going to want to finish up their laps, and Robert Franco still has a bit of time in hand that can possibly put him in a very solid position. We've already got 4 drivers into the 208s, and it looks very, very nice for them indeed. It's going to be very close racing. Only 3 drivers venturing into the 210s, so that's a very, very small spread in terms of the times of all of these drivers. Franco still holding on to that time gained, and he gets a bit of a slow exit off the heel, and he's lost a bit of time. He might be kicking himself over that, but he does make it work again on the exit there. Now he just needs to navigate the 2 last corners. And looking very neat on the exit there. He just needs to avoid the wall. Vasagi jumping into 9th. So only 2 drivers in the 210s. Franco is going to improve by 1.5 tenths, and that's going to be pop him up above Castellan. Rosima not really on a particularly fast lap. Tommy Moss finding almost 4 tenths, and then see how he progresses. Krobler finishing his lap, jumping in with a 2:08.9 in 5th position. Now Moss with 5 tenths in hand. He's going to want to hold on to that. Through the toe, he's improved yet again. 4 more corners left. And through the heel. This is a very tricky corner in terms of your braking, but if you can get it into that camber, that might help you out nicely. 7 tenths, looking very, very nice. And I think that's Heman right behind him also on his lap. And Moss just losing it there on the exit. I'm not exactly sure how. He might have been very late on the throttle, and he's going to be kicking himself over that. And yeah, he is going to stay where he is, and Heman straight into the pits. So the drivers will be getting ready to set themselves up on the grid. So I'm going to pop you over to an ad break, and then we'll be back with the race itself. For our first race with the Div 1 drivers, and we'll we'll have Mitchell, Leitwanger, and Leach Jr. leading the pack, and then Van Rooyen, Grobler, Leach, Smit, Franco, Castellan, Versaghi, Heeman, Moss, Barnard, Gauss, Van Heerden, Crook, Upton, and Hildebrand. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready for the first race for Div 1 here at Watkins Glen with the Mazda MX5s. The drivers are revving up the engine. It's kind of making me a bit nervous that I'm not switching over quick enough. You can see all of them lined up there, ready to get going. Just need to make sure that they don't rev out all their fuel and then stop without fuel in the race. So 6 lights are on the screen, ready to get going. And they are going to count down fairly quickly, and we are ready to get going. So off we go, and immediately, I think that's Leitwanger getting a very good start. Mitchell having to stick towards the inside. Leitwanger is going to try and get that drive around the outside, and he's going to tuck in. Not tuck in, but actually pull alongside. So Dennis and Leitwanger, or Mitchell and Leitwanger together through the first sector of the track. The rest of the field getting away very nicely. And for the behind, looking nice and clean. James Leach and Van Rooyen also having a nice little battle right behind the leaders. And now 3 wide as we go down the back straight. And this is going to get very, very spicy indeed. And unfortunately, that's going to be Leitwanger and Leach Jr. and cars all over the place. And Dennis, Van Rooyen, Leach, Franco and Smit all surviving that. Although I spoke too soon. Franco there in a battle with Timo Smit. And quite a few cars involved there as well. Coming through the chute, Franco and Smith on neck and neck. Behind them, Moss and Versaghi as well. Franco trying to carry the momentum around the outside, and he's going to lose out a little bit. Moss trying to jump into that little bit of a gap. And they pile on through. Now down towards the heel. Moss in a very vulnerable position, sandwiched between 3 different cars. And he just darts out so that he can kind of fall behind Versace there. Moss now losing out a little bit. He's got a whole bunch of cars behind him and kind of getting bullied towards the outside of the track the whole time. Out in front, Dennis Mitchell enjoying a fairly solid lead right off the bat, 1.2 seconds. Donny van Rooyen has not managed to pull away from Leach behind him, and they've got a whole bunch of cars just lining up, as you can see there. Further behind, Castellan is right on the rear of Versace, and he's going to try and get the move done. He wants to pull to the inside, he's not going to get the move executed, and he's going to tuck behind Versace again. But now Moss is looking at his rear. Through the S as we go, not really much to do here. You have to draft, you have to kind of maintain your momentum. Moss nudging his nose where it shouldn't really be, making a whole bunch of us nervous, but doing a superb job. Castellan running defensive, trying to resume the outside line. He's going to pull towards the outside of Versace. Oh, and getting spun around there. That's network code, unfortunately. And Versace and Moss are going to go on through, so I can only imagine the frustration that Castellan is experiencing. That inner loop is not his favorite section of the track, I can tell you that. Now Franco and Timo Smit very close together, but Franco first has Versace behind him to deal with. You can see Versace just behind him, catching that draft, and the whole train of cars. It's almost like a DRS train they would get in Formula 1. Melvin Goos and Tom Leary Moss in a bit of a battle. Melvin on the inside of the heel is going to get that move done quite nicely. And then out in front, that's going to be Versace and Franco in a bit of a battle. With Versace getting the overtake done. He's going to have to get that momentum done around the outside as Franco just pulls him behind him. Now Moss right on the heels of Melvin Goos as they drop down the main straight, and we'll see what Moss has up his sleeve, whether he wants to get something done. Doesn't really have the space to execute a move, so he's going to stay behind Goos. He knows that he doesn't really want to execute a move and then sacrifice his exit speed and lose a few positions. So for now he's going to stick in the DRS train, stick in line and see what happens in front of him. Melvin Goos sitting in the draft of Franco. You can imagine him trying to do something. He's going to pull towards the inside and up towards the inner loop. Franco trying to outbrake him, and Tom Leary Moss goes shooting off into the gravel trap, and thankfully recovers back on track, only losing a single position. Goos getting the overtake done on Versace, but not by much. Moss now dropping back a few more positions. He hasn't gotten his momentum going yet. Goos stepping out the rear of the car. Might have lost him a bit of time. Versace sticking right behind him for the toe. And up the hill they go. So Versace now 0.4 seconds behind Goos. And I think that gap is going to stay as is at the moment. James Cook running wide. That's going to promote Tom Leary Moss as the back of the pack pulls on through. In front, Timo Smit behind Leach, Renier Leach, and then in front of them Van Rooyen and Mitchell. Finding heaps of time. So we'll see what that brings him. in terms of laps. Mitchell doing a 208.3, 209 for Van Rooyen. And then you can see there Smit 4/10 faster than Leach in front of him. He's going, if he goes at this rate, he's going to be gaining on him. So we'll keep an eye there. Ghost and Versace sticking behind one another, kind of trying to catch up with the pack in front of them. But someone that they're not going to catch up with that easily is going to be Mitchell, all the way in front there. 3 seconds lead. He set himself up very nicely for the rest of the race. Now into the inner loop. Smith playing a dangerous game on the curb there. His car jumping all over the place. And you can see it's not costing too much time, but he is going to have to be careful. Barnard now under pressure from Franco. Franco right on his rear as they go into the chute. Not using as much of the exit as they would want. Behind them, a whole bunch of cars, Grobler, Moss, Crook and Leach Jr. As they come across the hill on the run towards the heel. Moss and Grobler setting up for a possible overtake. I don't think Moss is going to have the confidence to go for that one. He's doing a lot better on his Delta at the moment, so I think he might be finding his rhythm now. There's a whole bunch of cars. And one thing to consider in terms of the aerodynamics, I mean, you're drafting behind someone, but if you do get close enough, you start actually filling the area of low pressure air behind the car you're drafting behind, and almost in aerodynamic terms it starts looking like just one solid car. So that kind of helps split the load of the drag between the cars. I don't remember exactly what they call it, but the NASCAR drivers do tend to do that, but you need to be very close to the car in front of you. Now Moss on the inside of Grobler. He loves sticking his nose out there in the S's. It's quite interesting to watch. Just looking there on the YouTube chat, you guys are going, ooh, and that's Grobler hitting the wall. Wow, that looked painful. I hope it's okay. Goos also losing the car, Moss losing the car, and that's going to be a whole bunch of cars. That is a very unfortunate situation for Moss, Leitwanger, Grobler. I think no, the rest of the drivers seem to be fine. That looked very, very rough. Out in front, Timo Smits now gotten very close to René Leach. So René not getting the pace that he would want to close in on Van Rooyen. I think his attention might be focused on Smits right here. You can see Smit gaining a little bit of time. I think that was Leach that ran wide in the heel. And now he has a whole bunch of problems behind him. Smith is going to look at a good opportunity here if he wants to. He just needs to get that little bit closer to start getting the advantage of a draft. Start pulling behind him. Mitchell 208.6, 209s. You can see Smith just that smidgen, little bit faster than Leach. Asaki also with a very respectable 209 flat, but not close enough to anyone to really do something. So Smith now closing down that gap to 0.4 seconds. And now he has got the advantage of a toe. And Leach is in trouble here. They go up towards the inner loop. No shenanigans yet. So both drivers keeping in line. And we do have a mistake from Mitchell. So Mitchell has gone off track. And now that's going to be Leach and Smith overtaking him. So a rare error from Mitchell. And it has cost him dearly. So that promotes Van Rooyen out into the lead. That's creating a nice little battle. Timo Smith looking towards the inside of Leach into the toe. I think that might have restricted his line a little bit. He's going to have to fall in back behind. I think he might feel the pressure from Mitchell behind him. And I think Leach is going to be counting on it. Down towards the heel and no shenanigans again. Smith very aware of Mitchell behind him. He doesn't want to make a move that he's not guaranteed is going to work, because that can cost him the position. But a whole bunch of action here at the front of the pack. So 7 minutes left of the race. And then we've got 1 lap after that, and of course it depends when the leader crosses the line. Smith now with a very good opportunity here to attack. He's right behind. He just wants to poke the nose on the inside. Is not going to get the pass done. And he's just sticking behind Leach like a piece of bubblegum. Right there on the rear. And now he's going to seize this opportunity. He's going to try and position himself for the inside and then set himself up for the back straight. And they are going to be side by side going down the back straight. Now towards the inner loop. Side by side. Mitchell fancies an opportunity here as well. Decides better of it. And that is going to be Timo Smith into the kitty litter. Leach and Mitchell going ahead, so a little bit of a risky move there, and it hasn't paid off for Timo Smith. Now it is Mitchell and Leach fighting for second position, and Versage is starting to come into the mix. 0.9 seconds down the road, you can see him there in the white car. So these drivers need to be careful. They shouldn't waste one another's time too much. So it all depends on whether Mitchell feels like he's being held up. Leach does have a good amount of pace on him, so I think Mitchell might be sticking behind him until they get Versage out of range. And then they will resume their fight. But for now, Leach might have a bit of an assurance. So onto the back end of the circuit we go. Versage is not disappearing, and I think that's going to be bad news for Mitchell. It's so difficult to execute a move because you don't have the buffer of losing time by attacking the driver in front of you if there's someone right behind you to snatch up that position. Leach is second slower on that lap. And Versage 7/10 faster than Mitchell. So that is interesting. Ooh, and almost contact there between Mitchell and Leach. So they're going to try and pull side by side through the S's. And Leach still maintaining that bit of a lead. Now side by side towards the inner loop they are going to go. And this is going to be interesting. So Mitchell on the inside. He's got the car slightly ahead. So I think Leach is going to give him the corner and is going to try and fight back from there. There you go. So Leach gaining some momentum again on the inside through the outer loop, and now Mitchell is positioned for the inside of the chute. Not going to find the opportunity though, as Leach claims that corner, and he's going to charge on ahead. Van Rooyen there out in front with a 3-second lead, so he is in a very comfortable position. But the man right here, Leach, is fighting tooth and nail for this second position. You can see Mitchell just biding his time now, looking at the inside. I can't think that he's going to try and get it done on the brakes. They're going to go side by side, and Mitchell just restricted on that inside line, so not getting the jump on Leach yet, and I think he showed his hand way too early there. And some superb defending there from Leach, just keeping his cool and keeping calm. Mitchell yet again attacking Leach, and you can see he's basically touching the bumper of that car, and this is extremely close. Mitchell again positioning himself. I think that might have been just to make Leach sweat a little bit. Versace is still in that 0.9 second range of the two of them. Now side by side through the S's. Mitchell on the right hand side there. So on the outside of the circuit, Leach on the outside of the circuit, Mitchell on the inside, getting the move done. Now he is under pressure as well. Leach right behind him, trying to attack. And that's one hell of a drift from Mitchell. Leach nearly avoiding Mitchell right there. And that is a very costly mistake from Mitchell there. Okay, so finally we can look away. But there's been one massive battle here. Now, Mitchell has actually come out very close to Melvin Goos here. So Goos and Mitchell fighting there. Goos in the white car, trying to dive on the inside of Crook there. He's battling him for a bit, and up towards the toe they go. So side by side, there's going to be heavy braking for the heel. Goos just needs to be careful that he's not held up at the apex if he does want to do this on the brakes. And Mitchell getting very close to the rear of Crook there, running the car very wide, trying to avoid contact, and they're still side by side for the rest of the circuit. Mitchell pulling ahead of Goos, and Leach Jr. right behind them. I'd say Versace has actually caught up with Leach slightly. So Leach under a lot of pressure now with Versace behind him. And he's going to be fighting for that as hard as possible. Now out towards the 90. And Leach Jr. is trying to catch up with Goos in front of him. And unfortunately that's two cars off track. We'll see them drop down in the standings now. That's Ian Upton. I suspect Heman. No, that's not exactly sure who that was. Versace and Leach swapping positions, and then heading up towards the inner loop. We've got Leach Jr., Mitchell, Goos just pulling ahead of Leach Jr. there, getting the move done. So they're going to have to fight back for that. Mitchell making his way up on the pack. He's still stuck behind Crook at the moment, and there's not a big discrepancy in pace between these drivers, so it's going to be one hell of a battle between them. Goos is also not losing touch of Mitchell. They're very close together. But Mitchell now behind Crook and looking for a possible opportunity. And nothing yet happening on the brakes. Goos running slightly wide there. Really trying to carry that speed. Not finding an opportunity. Stephen Castellan getting in on the action there on the left-hand side of the circuit. And I think he's just made up 2 places with Crook and Mitchell. I think there may have been a mistake from Mitchell. Possibly contact between him and Crook. And Castellan has made up a lot of positions. We've now got Goos, Leach Jr. and Castellan all making the run down towards the front. Goos putting the pressure on Leach as they run side by side. Goos unfortunately has to award the corner to Leach, although he's run extremely wide. Goos has made back the position. Crook and Castellan now in a bit of a fight here, 3 wide, and that's going to be Mitchell involved as well. So they run up the hill. I think Mitchell might have backed out. He does not want to be in that sandwich. Is he going to try and go on the far inside of the chicane? It's going to be very dangerous. Castellan, Crook and Mitchell all side by side. And I think Mitchell unfortunately putting himself in a very bad position there. Unfortunately contact between him and Crook, and Castellan kind of a secondary impact there as he tried to avoid it on the left hand side. Yeah, you do need to be very careful when you go through wide. You never know what the other drivers are going to do. It's already difficult enough with 2 drivers, and when you make it 3 drivers, you kind of set yourself up for a ping pong ball effect. Upton also moving up on Mitchell. But we're now looking at Goos and Leach Jr. Just 3/10 separating the 2 of them. And we are on the final lap. So Donny van Rooyen is going to come across the line for the win. Just needs to avoid that wall. Osaki is going to be next. Then Leach, Barnard. And further behind, Castellan and Crook are still battling it out, as is Goos and Leach Jr. And almost a photo finish. I think that was 1/100th between the 2 of them. So your finishers are Van Rooyen, Pasagi and Leach. Then Barnard, Franco, Leach Jr., Goos, Castellan, Crook, Leitwanger, Mitchell, Upton, Heeman, Moss, Hildebrand, Van Heeren, Smit and Grobler. Almost looks like these guys were still racing as they come down the track. A bit of a cool down lap for all of them. I'm just going to make a few quick notes. And so Barnard on the cool down lap after that drive, but big race between them, and we are going to have a reverse grid for the second race. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything ends up. Mitchell, while he does have a bit of a bad result for the first race, is positioned for a superb second race if he can fight through the pack very quickly in that first lap. So it's all going to depend on how they finish. How they start. With Van Rooyen having to fight through the entirety of the pack, and drivers like Goos, Mitchell and Leitwanger maybe positioned a little bit better to get what they want. Moss is also very close to the front of the grid for the next race, and all of these drivers have superb pace, so it's not going to be the easiest task to really get ahead. So Goos's car looking rather beat up after that race. So not the most fun he might have had, but still a solid finishing position there in 7th. I'm going to send you guys to ads, and then we'll be right back for our reverse gridded race. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are on the grid. The drivers are ready and trying to shed as much fuel as they can before the race. I'm not always sure what the revving is about. The lights are not up yet, so we are getting ready to get going, but the race director is still making us wait a little bit. Right, the 6 lights are up and we are ready to get going. So a bit of a long pause and down the lights come. So 6 lights and lights out and off we go. So a very good start there. I think that was for Peter Grobler, as most of the pack gets away cleanly. There in the background you can see one of the drivers just making a run for it, and Richard Van Heeren falling behind Peter Grobler and Andre Hildebrand behind him as we get going. So very, very good start for Timo Smith, I would think. And Grobler leading the pack up the hill through the S's. Van Heeren trying to hold on to that position with Hildebrand and Timo Smith kind of drafting behind one another. And I think that might be him. Again, 3 wide into the chicane. And these drivers are going to get so close together. That's going to be Hildebrand and Timo Smith in front of him. Behind him, Mitchell already making his drive up the pack. As you can see, the grey car just in front of Timo Smith there, with Himan next to him. Now coming through the chute. Mitchell just ahead, Himan on the inside. He's going to try and make that move stick. And you can see Mitchell getting pushed outside, unfortunately, and that's going to be Himan off into the barrier. And now Mitchell needs to fight back for that position. Moss and Crook next to one another. Moss pulling in front. I think Crook lost out to Mitchell there as we continue up the hill. So Moss pushed to the outside there. He's going to fall behind Mitchell. So Mitchell working his way up the pack. Out in front, probably looking very comfortable with a 2-second lead after a single lap. Van Heeren behind him, holding on for dear life. And he's got Timo Smith to contend with. Corsa and James Leach now looking for a bit of a position change here. Close and Mitchell is going to charge on ahead. And contact between Mitchell, Ghost, and I think there was Leach Jr. involved there as well. So there's an unfortunate mistake, and Mitchell is waiting for him. And that's cost him a bit of a position. A bit more than just a position. Out in front, Van Heeren now under pressure from Smith. And this is going to go all the way into the inner loop. No real shenanigans. Smith doesn't fancy his chances through that chicane. But he does fancy his chances here. Up on the inside of Van Heeren he goes. And the outer loop proving the easier overtaking opportunity. Leach Jr. now under pressure from Moss. As they come through the chute, Moss is going to assume the inside line. Tuck behind him again, he doesn't have enough of a gap on the outside. And now Leach is going to try and see if he can go for the switchback. Leach running wide, and Moss does have a bit of pace in hand as they go up the hill. Leach Jr. running defensively deep on the inside. And Moss is just sticking on the outside. I think he doesn't fancy his chances yet. And up the hill we go. So Moss still keeping in touch, but he's got Versailles to deal with behind him now, and Crook as well. As they all come through in the drafting train. Moss just mere milliseconds behind. And we'll see what they get done towards the 90. So Moss on the outside. He's got Leach Jr. still in front of him. So Leach trying to assume the defensive line, but it wasn't necessary. But now he's run completely wide. Behind them, Versailles and Crook also in a bit of a battle. And I think Moss might be under pressure here. Moss trying to take an outside line, and he's not going to find the space. And that's going to cost him the position for Versailles and Crook. And he has to fall back a little bit. Now this is again another 3 wide situation. Leach, Versailles and Crook all next to one another. And Crook backing out wisely. And Leach Jr., the winner of that game of chicken, as they charge on through. Crook and Versailles having a bit of a dice here into the chute. Versailles behind, Crook slightly on the time. Crook trying to drive around the outside. They might not find the momentum. Behind them, contact. That's going to be a massive crash there. Leitwanger, Franco, Upton and Barnard, and the rest of the drivers getting through there cleanly. Other drivers waiting to rejoin safely, but one massive crash on the outside of the chute. On the front, Grobler still leading comfortably. Timo Smith assuming second position. Richard van Heeren in third, still very safely there. Hildebrand in a very solid fourth position. I can imagine that he's very happy with that. He does have Leach Jr. charging up behind him, but he does have almost half of the race done. He does have a bit more of a stretch to race, so if he can keep the defense up, he's going to be in a very good position. You do need a bit of a pace advantage to overtake, so these drivers can defend. They just need to make sure that they don't compromise their own race by defending too much. And unfortunately, I think that might have been, yeah, that's Crook spinning out his car in the background, and he's going to fall behind a little bit. So Moss promoted in front of Crook. Crook is going to still fall behind. He's not recovered his car yet. and Mitchell down in 11th position. This just isn't the day for Mitchell. Meanwhile, Leach Jr. is making a good work out of this race. And trying to straight line that outer or that inner loop. And they head through the outer loop. So, very close together. And Versaghi is putting the pressure on Leach Jr. And I think Hildebrand is going to be very thankful of that battle happening behind him. But he definitely can't let up. He is going to start to catch up Richard van Heerden at some point. He needs to get that overtake done as soon as possible when he reaches him. But for now, Versaghi looking very good here behind Leach Jr. You can see there in the rear of Leach Jr.'s mirror the pressure that he's got from behind. Versaghi just sticking nice and close. You can actually read the number plate when he gets that close. Tommy Ramos slightly in no man's land there in 7th position with 2 seconds in front of him and 2 behind. Well, more than 2 seconds. Doing a superb job of keeping his nose out of trouble. Well, maybe not the best job, but definitely trying to keep out of trouble as much as possible. Looking at the YouTube chat. Oh, and we've got a slow car on track. That's going to be Hildebrand. I think he might have made a mistake in turn 1 and had to rejoin. So that's cost him a little bit of time, and unfortunately that's going to push him down to 6th position and possibly 7th when Moss catches up with him. So, looking at the YouTube chat, shame. Gerrit Snijman saying, Dennis, you're supposed to go forward. I do think Mitchell has had a rough patch of luck at the moment. So a bit of a rough race. I think he's going to go sit down after this later tonight and have a little bit of a drink. And maybe just try and forget about the whole situation. It's been a bit of a rough race for him. But I think some other guys are going to be extremely happy from what they're getting out of this race. So Versaghi is still just sticking to the rear of Leach Jr. and Leach has got to really have nerves of steel to really drive nice and cleanly with a car this close behind him. It's so easy not to. It's so easy to look in your mirror, and once your attention is focused on the car behind you, you're not looking at the apexes, you're not looking at the exits, and that's going to compromise you in some way. I mean, if you just try and drive with your head pointed straight, it's already extremely difficult. It's the same as if you're driving on a triple monitor setup and or going to a single screen and now you can't see your mirrors, you can't see to the sides of you, you can't look at the apex, so it makes the whole driving situation a lot more difficult. So Leach running a little bit wide. Versaghi is going to move up on the inside, so nice clean overtake there. But behind them, this is Tommy Moss and Hildebrand. Tommy getting the overtake done, and now he's got Leach Jr. up on the road. Versaghi doesn't have the move done yet on Leach Jr. as they head into the inner loop. Versaghi tucking behind Leach Jr. and not really fancying his chances of outbraking his opponent into the chicane. And now Van Heerden is within striking distance as well, so he's going to start holding up this fight behind him, and it's going to become a three-way battle. So this This is putting pressure on Leach Jr. now. He needs to get this move done, otherwise he is going to be absolute toast. 7 minutes 40 seconds, and that will trigger the end of the race. I can imagine Van Heeren doesn't want it to be any longer than that. He really wants this to come as soon as possible. And the same goes for Leach Jr. So Van Heeren trying to carry as much speed as possible there. Now up the hill they go. Using as much of the outside curb as possible. And here Leach sits inside that sandwich between the two cars. Using a nice chunk of the curb on exit. Just getting that car nice and close to the apex, and he's got a good amount of speed on Van Heeren down the straight. But it just seems to bleed off a little bit. Van Heeren nudging his car towards the inside a little bit, not much, but it's enough just to make his car that little bit wider, kind of that offset, just maybe a wheel off the line, so you don't open up a gap on the outside. Speaking of gaps, Leach Senior trying to find the gap on the inside, doesn't find it, moves toward the outside, and now Van Heeren is going to try and stick with him. So side by side for the inner loop. And Leach Jr. is going to fall in behind, in front of Visagi. So now towards the chute. Oh, Leach Jr. running very wide there. That's going to cost him a lot of time. Visagi still keeping in touch with the fight, but not really involving himself yet. And into the inside, Leach goes for a dive. He's not going to find it, and he's going to have to stick behind again. Although Visagi is fancying his chance up the inside, pulls in back behind him. He doesn't have the closing speed that he would want. And we're still running Van Heeren, Leach Jr. and Visagi. Hildebrand and Moss still in a bit of a fight there in the background. Van Heeren hits a wall. That's going to back him up into Leach Jr. These cars are very, very close together. Leach just needs to make sure that he doesn't get held up too much. Now down the main straight they go, all of them drafting, and he's going to try and now do something on the inside. He does get pushed a little bit closer towards the inside by Van Heeren, but Leach getting the pass done. Van Heeren now under pressure from Visagi. Visagi might try and go on the inside here for the S's, and he does. So now the side by side through the S's up towards the main or the back straight. And Visagi has the advantage of a draft from Leach Jr. in front of him. Although Leach has moved towards the outside, that is pulling Van Heeren along a little bit. And Visagi is going to have to assume his position at the back of the three. Leitwanger and Kastlen having a nice little fight here towards the inner loop. There has been a crash. That's Hildebrand, unfortunately, off the track here, and we'll go past him. He was in the kitty litter right there. And that's going to promote quite a few of these guys. Mitchell and Crook also in a fight here. Crook just behind him. And Mitchell is going to try and fight his way up a little bit more. The loose end of that, or the back end of that car is really loose, and he has spun out completely. You've got cars avoiding him. Oh, and there's a secondary collision there. That is highly unfortunate. Probably charging off into the sunset with this race at the moment. 2 minutes 56 seconds left. And then Timo Smit, a very comfortable second position. And James Leach Jr. still in a battle with Van Heerden and Versage. Versage still behind them all. But very close there to Van Heerden. Charging down the main straight. Versage doesn't have enough closing speed to really try something. Although he's going to maybe look at that gap on the outside. Van Heerden just closing it off, realizing what he had done. And they go along. Moss now in complete no man's land in sixth position behind this fight that's happening right here. Versage once again up the S's, so he must have a very good exit out of the 90 and that first turn. Trying to go side by side with Van Heerden now here on screen as they come up towards the inner loop side by side. And Van Heerden just able to carry so much more speed through, although he has sacrificed his exit a little bit. Versage cutting through on the inside. He's able to keep the foot down, so that's some nice speed that he's carried through there, through the out loop into the chute. The rear of the car does look a little bit nervous, so he just needs to make sure that that is kept under control. The tires might be screaming a little bit at the moment. Van Heerden fancies his chances to come back at him. So now through the boot complex. These two are very close together. Nothing happening there though, so further behind, Castellan sticking to the rear of Leitwanger. Into the heel. Doesn't really get something out of that close gap that they've got between them, but he's going to stay and draw behind. Robler is going to cross the line before the 30-second mark, as the rest of the field goes plowing through. And it means we've got 2 laps left of racing. So Castellan still not giving up this fight. He's going to stick as close as possible. It's so difficult to get that closing speed done on the main straight. You really need that draft. You need to be close, and you need that draft to really get the move done. And with Div 2, you kind of had a bit of extra space in terms of outbraking your opponent. But in Div 1, it's much more difficult with the drivers being so close together in terms of performance. Crook and Himan now up towards the inner loop. And Crook not pulling ahead, so Himan staying ahead of him. And they're going to have to resume the fight. It's very important that you get that fight done before you reach the outer loop. Otherwise you put yourself in a very vulnerable position. Out ahead, the Versage and Leach Jr. fights are still going on. I think Van Heerden just dropped back a little bit. Crook now trying to carry some speed around the outside. He might go for a bit of a switchback. Get that exit going in the run up towards the heel. And they have pulled alongside one another, and Crook has gotten the move executed. He just needs to make sure that he can resume the racing line. Squeezes him on slightly towards the outside, and into the corner they come. Nice wide line for Crook there, but he needs to be careful that he doesn't lose all of his speed. And Himan is going to try and fight back on the inside. I'm not exactly sure what happened there. That looked like contact. Now, final lap, and we've got a battle for third. So, Versage incredibly close to Leach Jr. But sticking right to the rear of that car. Both drivers going very wide off track. That is extremely odd. know you want the toe from the car in front of you, but that's a bit of an extreme measure. But Versace now chasing Leach Jr. As they go around the corner, they're pulling alongside one another. Versace slightly ahead, running very defensively on the inside. Now assuming the racing line, Leach Jr. just sticking to his rear. And he's going to be waiting for a mistake from his opponent. Leach trying to keep the momentum going. He's still extremely close. It's tantalizingly close. As they go into the boot. And coming out, this is so close to getting side by side. And I do have to interrupt this slightly, because out of front, Krobler is under pressure. He might have made a mistake somewhere, but Timo Smith is 1 second down the road. So if there's a mistake coming from this, not exactly sure what's happening there. Krobler sounds like he's struggling. The gap is down to 2 tenths now. This is extremely close between the two of them. You can see he's not really utilizing the corner as much. He's sticking slightly towards the inside. Smith now closing down the gap. This is going to be very close. Maybe not a photo finish, but extremely, maybe too close for comfort. Versace and Leach Jr. also coming across the line extremely close. Gaston and James Crook still battling it out this close to the end of the race. And that is going to look like the finishing positions. Dennis Mitchell, fortunately a bit of a rough race for him, in 12th position. As the rest of the drivers come piling in. So finishes Krobler, Smith, Versace, and then Leach Jr., Van Heeren, Moss, Leitwanger, Crook, Castellan, Van Rooyen, Barnard, Mitchell, Leach, Upton, Hildebrand, Franco, and Heeman. As I unfortunately miss the victory donuts. But we are going to go towards the interviews, so I'll be right back with some of the drivers to have those interviews with.